What we want to do is give you projects that you can do, and along the way give you insights and tips and techniques, and also encourage you to make the jigs that we come along with. So whatever I show you, there are many ways of doing it. The way I show you is just one way, and you might see me doing one particular task one way one week, and the next week I'll do it a totally different way. So it just goes to show the versatility of woodwork and woodworkers. How to make a hexagonal box. Now with this technique you can apply it to as many sided boxes as you like. If you want to do a 5-sided, a 7-sided, an 8-sided, it really doesn't matter. And along the way I'll give you some very handy techniques on gluing up, how to clamp different shaped objects, and also we'll be exploring marquetry and veneering, and I'll set some very simple marquetry motifs that anyone can make if they want to try. Join with me as we start episode 1 of hexagonal box and marquetry making. First of all, what you've got to do is get some raw material. Now I've already cut this up, but basically just get a strip of timber, however deep you want the box. Make that timber just a little bit wider, because you're going to lose a little bit when you actually cut the box top off. And there's various ways of cutting a box top off, and I'll show you at least 3, possibly 4 different ways of doing that. Now this is going to be a hexagonal box, which is 6 sides, which means these angles here have to be at 60 degrees. Now in order to get them at 60 degrees, what you do is set your saw to cut at 30 degrees. So whether you have good old faithful here, which is a hand saw and jig sort of setup, and I've cut many boxes using this, I would set that to cut at 30 degrees. Now if I cut at 30 degrees, that means if my timber is square at 90 degrees and I cut at 30, it's got to leave me 60. Alright, so whether you've got one of these, you've got a table saw, you've got a docking saw, or maybe even a bandsaw with a tilting table, it doesn't matter. But make sure you end up with 60 degrees on both ends and 6 pieces equal length. And the best way to check to see if they're equal is just hold them back to back like that, and that should be equal in length to this side here. So now we've got 6 pieces. I don't know, down the track I might put some keys in it, but at the moment we're just going to do a basic glue up. Now to do a basic glue up, normally a miter joint, which even though this isn't a miter as in a 45-degree miter, it is still a miter joint. And they're not the strongest joints in the world, because what happens is once you put glue on here, this is the end grain and the glue will just soak back into the fibre. So when you actually come to glue it together, you've got a pretty weak joint because there's only a thin layer of glue on each surface, because most of it's been taken up to go in the grain. So I'll show you a way you can overcome that, and it's called sizing. Now what I'm going to use an ordinary PVA glue for this, and yep, this one here. It's not a quick dry, it's just a normal Sally's Aquateer interior. Okay, so you could use Gorilla Glue, you could use Type Bond, or whatever bond glue you want to use. As most of you know, I use a lot of hide glue, but in this particular exercise I'm going to use a PVA. Expose all the end grain, take the top off. Hopefully we haven't got any hard glue in the neck, and we don't, which is a good thing. And then just spread it out. Now if you find it might be, if you look under my benches, there's decades of glue. Now your glue might be a little bit thick, whether it's old or it might be a thicker glue. So what you can do, grab the old water bottle you use on your vise, give it a little bit of a spray. Now that waters it down a bit. which allows it to come back and be sucked into the end grain a little bit easier, and it won't make any difference in the end. And go again. Now, depending on your gluing time, what I would do if I was making boxes, I'd actually do this in the evening. Size it all up, bit of greaseproof paper or oven wrap. It's easy to clean up later on. And that's it. Just let it soak in overnight. And when you come back the next morning, it's going to be nice and dry. Welcome back. And the next morning, yes, it is nice and dry. Now we've just got to join the box together. We'll glue it up, join it, and then we'll let that set. So the easiest way to clamp any sided figure, whether it's 3-sided to 10-sided, I'll share with you. Got to be reasonably quick with this because the glue can go off. Again, I'm just using the same glue that I used yesterday. Spreading it on. You'll notice too it's a lot rougher under your fingers if you're using fingers because we've actually got those sealed ends. Switch it over, glue the other sides. And I know I keep saying it, but I'd prefer to use too much glue and clean it off and not use enough glue and have a job fail. So there we have it. 6 pieces ready to glue up. Now I separate them in half and then turn them in. So I've got 3 pointing that way and 3 pointing that way and place them together. And now the easiest clamp in the world you've ever seen for doing polygon boxes, the humble rubber band. How easy is this? Get that last one in. Isn't that the most amazing thing you've ever seen? Just make sure they're all nice and even. Put my specs on, so I've got no excuse. Okay, now what I'll do, put another rubber band to fit around the top. And one on the bottom. Now the bands I use, the numbers are 105, they're the really small ones, which I'm not sure if they still make them, 107s, which is medium-sized ones, and 109s, which are really big ones that I use for large constructions. Okay, so just hold that in there, turn it over, make sure it all meets nicely, and then get a wet rag and clean all that excess glue out. You may have noticed that I didn't bother to sand flat the inside parts of the box. The reason for that is I'm actually going to line the box so I don't need to have it dead flat. And the outside, I will sand that when I've finished it. Let's get in there, don't be worried about water. Water and wood are good friends, because you're not actually getting the water into the glue joint, because you should have a fairly snug fit with the mating surfaces. Now just clean that to make sure it's nice and evenly. And we'll just sit and let that dry. And that's it. It should be dry by now. But the inside's all nice and clean. I haven't got extra gunk or glue there. It's just a question of taking the rubber bands off. Another little trick with rubber bands, if you keep them in the fridge, I keep mine in a little box like this and I keep it in the workshop fridge, and some of those rubber bands I've had for 5 years. So that's it. That's the carcass of our box. It's glued together. It's cleanish on the inside, got a few dags on the outside, but that's not an issue. But next week, what we'll do is do a little bit of veneering. We'll start to put the ply panels on top of these, and I'll show you how to make a very small sunburst and a couple of tricks when using veneer. So until next week, this is Steve pulling the shed door down on a new look project, and hoping you are enjoying it and will join us again shortly. So remember to keep it sharp, more importantly, keep it safe and enjoy your work.